Nowhere in the world are tornadoes more common than in the United States. Every year, thousands of tornadoes touch down and terrorize the American heartland, causing millions upon millions of dollars in damage and killing dozens of people. They're ingrained within the culture and folklore of this land. Their depictions in TV, film, and literature are plentiful. Native American myths and legends, such as that of the dead man walking, still strike fear into those who hear them even today. Yet, not all tornadoes are made equal. Some are weak, practically harmless as they dance about in open farm fields, doing no damage, hurting nobody. Yet others often prove to be much more destructive. Massive, mile-wide walls of darkness, consuming everything in sight, ripping skin off of cattle, tearing bark off of trees, leaving foot-deep trenches in the ground they traverse, erasing entire towns from existence. These are the monster tornadoes, the violent F4s and F5s that border on unsurvivable. These are the 10 deadliest tornadoes in U.S. history. On the evening of June 8, 1953, a large and exceptionally violent F5 tornado tore through the northern side of Flint, Michigan. This tornado flattened hundreds of homes in the city and its suburb of Beecher, killing 116 individuals along its nearly 19-mile-long path. In the 1950s, the U.S. lacked the tornado warning system that it currently has. As a result, those in Flint and Beecher had little to no advanced warning of the approaching twister, only taking shelter when they were able to lay eyes on the massive vortex as it bore down on them. A crowded drive-in movie theater near Flint was showing a film as the twister approached. Panicked theatergoers quickly fled the scene in their cars, many getting into accidents or inadvertently driving right into the tornado's path, contributing to the high death toll. The theater itself suffered only minor damage. To this day, the tornado remains the deadliest in Michigan's history. On June 12, 1899, a tornado estimated at F5 intensity touched down in far western Wisconsin, near the Minnesota border. After tearing through mostly rural portions of St. Croix County, the tornado barreled into the city of New Richmond, Wisconsin at peak intensity. The town was exceptionally crowded that day, as the Gulmar Brothers Circus had come to town, attracting hundreds of tourists from nearby communities. The tornado entered town shortly after the circus ended, meaning the downtown area was full of people out and about with their families. Almost every building in town was erased from existence. What little did remain was soon torched by fires that raged through the community in the twister's wake, the infernos complicating search and rescue efforts as first responders battled the flames. In subsequent hours, trains would pour into the city from St. Paul full of doctors, nurses, and supplies. They'd get to treating the injured in what few buildings remained upright, sharing the limited space available with makeshift morgues to collect the dead. In the end, the New Richmond tornado would claim the lives of 117 people along a 45-mile-long path, making it the deadliest tornado in Wisconsin state history. Among the dead was 70-year-old Louisa Hurd. She lived on a farmstead a short ways outside of New Richmond. At the time the twister struck, she had company at her home, the Wares family, a father, daughter, and son. Just as the wind outside of the Hurd home began to pick up and the tornado became visible, John Nightke and his fiancée ran up to the door. They had been passing by when the storm caught them off guard. Just as the tornado struck the home, the door swung open. The both of them, the Wares and Miss Hurd, ran inside. Yet the Twister was already on top of them. Louisa Hurd and 13-year-old Gertie Hears were both killed as the vortex engulfed them. Gertie's father and brother were able to escape to the cellar before they were taken too. John Nike was killed by flying debris as well, while his fiancée miraculously managed to emerge uninjured. In the late morning hours of April 24th, 1908, a large, violent tornado touched down in southeastern Louisiana. The twister quickly intensified, growing to nearly 2 miles wide as it tore a path directly through the city of Amite, where 29 people lost their lives. Several other people lost their lives in the nearby rural communities of Denham Springs, Montpelier, Wilmer, and Pine. Despite crossing through mostly rural portions of Louisiana at this stage in its life, numerous farmsteads and country homes would be decimated throughout the region. After crossing into Mississippi, the twister would kill 2 more people before slamming into the village of Purvis. 55 people in the small town, which at the time only had around 700 people, would be killed. Only 7 of the town's 150 buildings were left standing after the twister. Additional fatalities were soon documented in areas to the east of Purvis, including 4 railroad workers who perished while attempting to take shelter in a boxcar near Hattiesburg. The boxcar was thrown over 150 feet and torn apart in the tornado's violent winds. As the twister weakened, it took a few additional lives near the village of Richmond before finally lifting, leaving behind a path of destruction the region had rarely seen before. With 143 deaths, the tornado is among the deadliest in U.S. history, although present-day meteorologists question whether or not the twister's path of destruction actually was the product of a tornado family, rather than one singular vortex. On the evening of Sunday, May 22nd, 2011, a large and incredibly violent tornado touched down a short ways to the west of the city of Joplin, Missouri. The twister rapidly expanded into a massive wedge upon touching down, and soon barreled into the city of 50,000 at EF5 intensity. Row after row of homes on the west side of Joplin would suffer extensive damage, miles of suburbia erased in mere seconds. In some areas, slabs were swept nearly clean. The homes that had formerly stood upon them disintegrated by the tornado's 200-plus mile-per-hour winds. Some of the most extreme damage produced by the tornado would occur at the St. John's Medical Center, which lost nearly every window on 3 sides, many of its interior walls, and part of its roof. Its life flight helicopter was also blown away and destroyed. 5 patients would lose their lives at the hospital after the failure of a backup generator knocked off their life support. The twister peaked as it crossed Main Street in Joplin, where dozens of homes were obliterated. Some concrete porches were reportedly deformed by the winds and the debris hurled in the twister's vortex, and many trees were completely debarked. Some vehicles here went missing, thrown away amidst the tempest and never recovered. A large church, a nursing home, Franklin Technology Center, St. Mary's Catholic Church and School, and Joplin High School were all demolished in this area as well. At the Greenbrier Nursing Home, 21 fatalities were unfortunately documented. The high school was thankfully empty, the school's graduation ceremony taking place on that same exact day, 3 miles to the north, at Missouri Southern State University. The ceremony ended just a few minutes before the twister impacted town. However, as the graduates and family members returned home, many ended up being caught in the twister's path. Among them was Will Norton. Will was a YouTuber who published videos about various things in his life under the name Wildebeest. Filmmaking was his passion, and he had just recently been accepted to Chapman University Film School a few weeks prior. He was driving back home with his father when the tornado struck their vehicle. Will was sucked out of the car's sunroof, his father trying his best to hold on to his leg, but the winds proved too strong. Will was only 18 years old. The tornado continued on, tearing through commercial and industrial areas in eastern Joplin before lifting in rural areas east of the city, leaving behind a nearly 22-mile-long path of devastation. In total, the Joplin tornado claimed the lives of 158 people and caused over $2.8 billion in damage, making it the costliest in U.S. history. A tornadic disaster nearly unparalleled in modern America. It's the only event on this list to occur after 1953. On April 9th, 1947, a massive 2-mile-wide tornado tore a path through portions of Texas and Oklahoma. Moving at nearly 50 miles per hour, the twister swept through several rural communities in the two states, among them the village of Glacier, Texas, which was struck first. Most structures in the rural village were swept completely away, their remnants scattered about the fields nearby, only little pieces left in the village itself. Vehicles in the area were thrown hundreds of yards and mangled beyond recognition. Foliage around Glacier was torn apart and shredded, while the ground around the town was significantly scoured, leaving behind a long, muddy trail. 17 people died in Glacier, a large segment of the tiny hamlet's overall populace. An additional 51 people lost their lives in the village of Higgins, right along the Texas-Oklahoma border. Entire rows of homes in the farming town were swept away, and the downtown area was practically erased. Shortly afterwards, the twister would enter the state of Oklahoma, where it would soon become the deadliest tornado in the state's twister-rattled history. Countless rural farmsteads would disintegrate in the vortex's wild winds, before slamming into the city of Woodward. Here, apocalyptic levels of damage would be observed. 100 city blocks disappeared from the map. Over 100 people would lose their lives. A 20-ton steel boiler tank at the city's power plant was lifted up and thrown a block into half. Trees across the village were debarked. Upon exiting Woodward, the tornado would continue for several more miles, before finally lifting west of the city of Alva, putting an end to a 98-mile path of destruction. 184 people lost their lives. 4-year-old Joan Gay Croft was among the survivors of the tornado. She and her sister Jerry sheltered in a hallway of the Woodward Hospital after the disaster. Jerry recalled that one night, 2 men came and took Joan away, claiming they were relocating her to a hospital in Oklahoma City. She was never seen again. The case has gone on to become one of the most mysterious intersections of severe weather and crime. The case still remains unsolved. On April 6, 1936, a large tornado moved into the city of Gainesville, Georgia, tearing a path directly through the city. At the center of town sat the Cooper Pants Factory, a large clothing manufacturer with hundreds of workers in it at the time the tornado struck. The tornado caught the workers off guard, all of them riding the storm out in the building as the twister tore through the area, leading to a partial collapse of the building. Up to 125 people were trapped on the second floor when the roof came down, blocking the only stairwell connecting them to the bottom level. Within minutes, the building erupted into a massive fireball. The victims stuck under the rubble were soon engulfed in flames. Only 3 people were able to escape before the inferno started. All in all, 70 people lost their lives at the Cooper Pants Factory, the highest death toll in a single building ever recorded during a tornado. Debris in Gainesville was piled up to 10 feet high in the wake of the twister, complicating search and rescue efforts. In the end, 203 people in total lost their lives in the storm, the deadliest in Georgia's history. On April 5th, 1936, the day before the devastating Gainesville tornado, another large and extremely violent twister touched down in northern Mississippi. The tornado slammed into the west side of Tupelo, flattening dozens of large mansions in the Willis Heights neighborhood. An entire family of 13 was killed in this area when their home was flattened and swept away. While missing downtown Tupelo, the tornado went on to strike the residential areas on the north side of the city, tearing through populated blocks of houses, taking many lives. The Gum Podge neighborhood of Tupelo was perhaps the worst hit, homes swept away and thrown into the titular pond. Reportedly, the pond was full of bodies after the twister. Some individuals in the neighborhood were never recovered. After leaving Tupelo, the tornado passed over open fields, granulating and windrowing debris for miles as it crossed through predominantly agricultural areas, before finally lifting in northeastern Mississippi. The twister leveled almost 50 city blocks within Tupelo, leveling close to 1,000 homes and taking the lives of 216 people, although subsequent research has suggested the death toll may have been as high as 233. Among the most notable survivors of the tornado was 1-year-old Elvis Presley, who survived the storm and the subsequent fires that swept through Tupelo alongside his parents. During the early evening hours of May 27, 1896, a massive mile-wide tornado touched down just to the west of St. Louis, Missouri, then one of the largest and most influential cities in the United States. The tornado tore a path directly through the center of the city, slamming right into the downtown district at approximately F4 intensity. The tornado demolished entire homes, churches, factories, and saloons, many of them packed full of people. After hitting the downtown area, the twister crossed the Mississippi River, where an uncertain amount of people may have perished on the many boats that often traversed the waters near the city, their bodies likely having been washed downriver, therefore making it impossible to count them towards the overall death toll. The tornado peaked in intensity as it made landfall in East St. Louis, Illinois. Hundreds of homes were swept away along the riverfront. 35 people were killed when the tornado struck the Vandalia rail yard at this intensity. The tornado was the most devastating and the costliest in U.S. history at the time. Tens of thousands of buildings in the cities were destroyed, and 255 people lost their lives. During the early afternoon of May 7, 1840, a large tornado touched down roughly 20 miles to the southwest of Natchez, Mississippi, in east-central Louisiana. The tornado gradually continued to the northeast, running right along the Mississippi River. Forests were reportedly destroyed on both sides of the river, as the wedge tornado terrorized the shoreline, destroying dozens of plantations before slamming into the busy port city of Natchez. Here, 116 of the 120 flatboats docked at the Natchez landing were tossed into the river. Reports estimated that upwards of 200 people were killed in these boats alone, the crew and passengers aboard the vessels drowning in a raging river full of debris. As the tornado continued on, it was so wide that both Natchez and the village of Vandalia, Louisiana, across the river, were simultaneously impacted by its winds. Homes and businesses along the river were both decimated, with near total devastation documented. The Niles National Register documented the following in the wake of the disaster, describing the neighborhood of Natchez under the hill as a scene of desolation and ruin which sickens the heart and beggars description. All is swept away, and beneath the ruins still lay crushed the bodies of many strangers. It would fill volumes to depict the many escapes and heart-rending scenes. One of the most interesting was the rescue of Mrs. Alexander from the ruins of the Steamboat Hotel. She was found greatly injured, with the 2 children in her arms, and they both dead. Officially, 317 people lost their lives in the storm, 269 of those being crew and passengers aboard the boats docked along the Mississippi River, and 47 being on land in Natchez and Vidalia. The actual death toll, however, was likely much higher, as the slaves who died on the plantations in Louisiana were largely not counted towards the final total. Shortly after noon on March 18, 1925, a small funnel cloud was spotted traversing the hills of southeastern Missouri. Initially a highly visible and relatively harmless needle dancing through the hills of the Ozarks, it soon began to morph into something much more sinister. The tornado claimed its first life near the village of Ellington, Missouri, before the tornado rapidly intensified and slammed into the mining towns of Annapolis and Ledana. 2 people lost their lives in this area, and several homes are reported to have been leveled. As the twister passed near the village of Fredericktown, it rapidly began to increase in size, soon turning into a massive wall of swirling black clouds, barely recognizable as the raging tornado it was. The tornado claims the lives of several additional individuals near the village of Sedgwickville, Missouri, and injured an additional 32 children when it struck a school in rural Bollinger County. Extreme ground scouring was observed in the fields nearby. The twister killed 4 in the village of Beale as it took on a multi-vortex shape shortly afterwards. The tornado subsequently crossed the Mississippi River into Illinois before barreling into the village of Gorham. The entire town was obliterated. Nearly every building in the small riverside hamlet erased from existence. Railroad tracks were reportedly ripped from the ground nearby, trees suffered extensive debarking, and significant ground scouring was reported in the fields nearby. Over half of the people living in Gorham at the time were injured or killed. The tornado continued in a northeasterly direction at highway speed, slamming into the city of Murfreesboro, Illinois at over 60 miles per hour, carving a nearly 1-mile path directly through the city of 10,000. Entire rows of homes in Murfreesboro were leveled. The city's densely populated working-class neighborhoods were the worst impacted, countless houses blown away in mere seconds. 17 students lost their lives when the tornado struck the Longfellow School, and an additional 9 were killed at the Logan School. A large inferno erupted in the wake of the twister, sweeping through the city and killing many trapped beneath the rubble. Water mains in Murfreesboro were destroyed, so locals attempted to stop the fires by using dynamite, although this only made the devastation worse and took more lives. 234 people died in the city, the highest number of fatalities caused by a tornado in a single city in U.S. history. The farming town of DeSoto was next on the tornado's rampage, the small village obliterated like Gorham and Murfreesboro before. 56 people were killed in the town, 33 losing their lives at the DeSoto school, the highest tornado death toll ever reported at a school. 14 people were killed in and around the village of Bush. An additional 25 lost their lives in rural portions of Franklin County. The tornado next struck the city of West Frankfort, a prospering mining community of nearly 10,000 people. Like Murfreesboro before, the twister decimated several densely populated neighborhoods in town and ravaged the city's mines and industrial areas. 102 people lost their lives in West Frankfort. The villages of Caldwell and Parrish were struck next before the tornado reached its maximum width of approximately 1.5 miles wide near the city of McLeansboro. The villages of Caldwell and Parrish were struck next before the tornado reached its maximum width of approximately 1.5 miles near the city of McLeansboro. After crossing into Indiana, the twister obliterated the town of Griffin, leaving not a single building standing. 41 people lost their lives in the village. After clipping the city of Princeton, the tornado finally lifted at around 4:30 p.m. Central Standard Time near the village of Oatsville, leaving behind a 219-mile-long path. The tornado took the lives of approximately 695 individuals, although that number is widely believed to have been much higher in reality, still making it the deadliest tornado in U.S. history, and the second deadliest ever documented. While the tornado is widely believed to have actually been a tornado family as opposed to one singular twister, it remains one of the most devastating tornadic episodes in U.S. history, and carries on an undeniable legacy even a century later. A legacy that the towns it impacted will never forget. This has been Overcast. Thank you for watching.